From pretty Prince George's County, Maryland, home of KKP Media Group Studios, and the side of our sports scarring director's commentary today. One day, a sports content creator set out on a journey to investigate the fan relationships to their teams, so he crafted a docu-series by the title of Sports Scars to do just that, having fans go through their first-person perspective of the most heartbreaking moments in sports history. Their laughs, their cries, their emotional highs and lows, but that is what sports is built on, and I am here as a director. I am indeed Kevin Pearce, here to talk about episodes 6 through 13 that explore just that. Do not forget to like, comment, subscribe, follow on every last one of the socials at KPearceTV, but most importantly, enjoy this week's episode of
And the Rookie of the Year, an Olympic gold medalist,
my blood just starts boiling.
a 4-time scoring champion, a 7-time All-Star,
Having your heart just ripped out, thrown on the ground.
an MVP of the league, Kevin.
episode 6, KD going to OKC. This is another one of those episodes that I've always known was going to be an episode from the moment I incepted this show, because duh. Like, this is one of the most heartbreaking moments for an entire city. I think outside of losing your team in general, hint, hint, we'll get there later. Losing your star player, the person that has all the jerseys in the crowd, the person that you're rooting for every single game, is a scarring moment. And yeah, you could say the OKC fans reacted a little extremely, but if you say that, I doubt how real of a sports fan you are, because burning jerseys is kind of just customary for how people act when you leave the squad. Yeah, they mad. Yeah, they gonna burn up the jersey that they spent their own hard-earned money for. Shoot, some people will buy a new jersey just to burn it. That's kind of how it goes. But I was happy I could get my man Devin on this show. Me and Devin have been cool since we were freshmen in high school. So that's a lot of years. Since then, we're talking decade plus of friendship, and he's been a huge supporter of the content since, honestly, my first iteration of being a content creator in 2020. He's been a huge supporter. So I'm so happy that we're finally able to work together, and I knew that I had to wait until OKC won the title to approach him about this subject. I knew, okay, let's wait until some happy stuff happens before I approach him about what might be the most devastating sports moment of his entire life. Let's wait a little before we get there. And thankfully, he said yes, came down to the studio in this very room I'm sitting in right now. Now, a little bit into how the sausage was made. The camera I'm recording on right now decided for some odd reason to not format with the SD card that day. To this very moment, I don't know why. The next day I bought another backup SD card, because I already had one, but it wouldn't format with that SD card either. So I'm sitting there, 2 SD cards not working, had to record it on my phone, which is usually the second angle, which I'm not gonna lie, I was too lazy to set up for the director's commentary today, sue me. But the one I usually use for the second angle, the phone, I had to use that for the whole episode, which is why it's a lot of zooms and going from a medium close-up to a regular close-up to the full body shot to this close-up to that close-up, because I had to do the change in angle some way, somehow. But it still came out great. And it did kind of give me the perspective of, okay, things don't have to be perfect for you to end up with a final good product. It is a great episode, and the quality still looks great. I forget that iPhones can shoot in 4K sometimes. And there's always a balance I try to strike within these episodes, which is not bashing the subject of the episode while also capturing the emotion of the fan. I didn't want it to be 15 minutes of, yeah, FKD, yeah, send him to the gulag, I hope he fails, and blah, blah, blah. I didn't want it to be that. Thankfully, Devin's emotions aren't that now. In the moment, his emotions were there when KD first left, calling him a Benedict and all that there. But eventually, and I think, again, OKC winning the title did a lot to help there with him turning out on the other end. He's a lot more healed from this moment now, which allowed for, I think, a great episode in total. My favorite moment from this episode had to be the KD ripped my heart out and started beating his feet all over the heart. And to this very moment, I'm still upset that I wasn't able to find a clip of KD beating his feet. KD is from PG County, Maryland, just like me. So I know that somewhere on the internet, there exists a video of Kevin Durant beating his feet. For y'all that aren't from the DMV, beating your feet is a dance that you do to go-go music. I would do it on camera, but I got a limited amount of space I'm working with here. But I couldn't find it after hours upon hours of searching. And if you're thinking it's that video of him in the tunnel with the Warriors where he's doing that little dance, it's not that. That's not beating your feet. That's something else. I don't know what he was doing. He was hitting it. He was hitting that joint, but it wasn't what he was doing. Still upset I couldn't find it, but still happy with the final product of the episode. Thank you to Devin for coming on. I guess thank you to KD for leaving OKC fans in a win. Worked out great for me. Worked out bad for OKC fans, but as far as my personal content, worked out great. Appreciate you, big dog. Next episode we go.
Welcome Chip as the new head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles.
What the hell is going on?
It's the news that has Philadelphia in shock tonight. Eagles running back LaShawn McCoy will be traded.
This was barely anything you got for him. Twice. He's a key player.
The Philadelphia Eagles dropped a bombshell announcement. Head coach Chip Kelly has been fired.
The Chip Kelly era for the Eagles. This episode is unique in so many ways. Number one, it's the one episode that wasn't my idea. Wilkins proposed this idea to me. Wilkins is an Eagles fan, as per what y'all saw in the episode, right? So he wanted to come on the show. He's been a huge supporter as well. Shout out Wilkins. Obviously, I wanted him on the show, but I couldn't think of a heartbreaking Eagles moment. Eagles fans, you probably know this. Y'all got it pretty damn good. Y'all don't have a lot of heartbreaking moments. Yeah, y'all lost some Super Bowls, but that's not really compelling for an entire 15-minute episode. Those are great for the 1-minute shorts I do on the other social media platforms and the YouTube shorts. But as far as 15-minute breakdown of an episode, not exactly a great topic. So when he approached me about the Chip Kelly era, I was like, oh my God, yes. Because every time you say the name Chip Kelly to an Eagles fan, it's been almost a decade. It might have been a decade by now, actually. They still get upset. As per proof of my TikTok video I made of this, the shortened version of the TikTok version of the long form videos I make of the topic or whatever, there's still Eagles fans commenting how angry they are at Chip Kelly right now. This video came out almost 2 months ago and people are still upset. They're like, how dare he trade Shady McCoy? Which, again, how dare he trade Shady McCoy? But this was a decade ago and people were still mad. And it kind of opened my horizons as to what this show could be. It's beyond just, okay, this game sucked. Okay, this player broke my heart. It's, okay, what happens when your team is mismanaged for years? That's a different type of heartbreak. What happens when you had such high hopes for your team and you watch them slowly fall apart? Which is so compelling, and I'm so happy that Wilkins approached me with this because I'll be honest, I wouldn't have thought of it otherwise. And now there'll be episodes coming down in the future that will have that same type of flair to them. None of them that I'm going to talk about on today's episode, but some that'll be recorded in the future, some that I'm planning now, that is strongly based on this episode. And I think what makes this episode work so well, in my opinion, is Wilkins. Wilkins' Philly fan frustration shines and carries this episode. To the point where when I was doing the B-roll cover for this episode, I wanted to not use as much because I'm like, no, his emotion is the B-roll. Like, he's showing so much different phases of frustration and anger and jubilation and so many different phases of fan anger. It's what the show is. It's fan passion. It's the core of the show that Wilkins shows so great. So I didn't want to like cover that with an awkward picture of Chip Kelly in spots where it wasn't necessary. But Wilkins did such a great job. So it's a lot. I think that might be the least amount of B-roll I've ever used for an episode, even though it was on Zoom, and I usually do it more for the Zooms. Again, that's a lot really sausage making, but if you're still listening or watching so far, that's why you're here, right? So let's see. My favorite moment from this episode is I somehow forgot about the Riley Cooper incident. Granted, white man says racial slurs happen so often it doesn't really register in my mind as something to remember over a decade later, I'll be honest. So when it came up, I was like, oh, that was the breaking point of the Chip Kelly era. They were never the same after that. And it never would have dawned on me until he brought it up. Again, I'm so happy that Wilkins exists and gave me this episode. So thank you again, Wilkins, for this. I greatly appreciate you. Next episode we go.
This is a call that could determine the whole game right here.
Sneed.
It's out.
It just keeps happening. We keep getting there and not getting over the hump.
For Mike Edwards.
Just super disappointed and just heartbreaking.
He goes long and on his back to ice it.
The 2024 AFC Championship game that kind of turned into a episode about the 2024 Ravens anyways. Thank you so much to Adriana from Black Girls Love Football, someone else I'm a huge fan of and wanted to collaborate with for a while, and luckily this show exists, so I have a medium to collaborate with fans on it. Knowing she was a Ravens fan, the fact that the Billy Cundiff episode was already taken by my older brother was like the big, I don't want to say obstacle because I love that episode and I love my brother obviously, but it was like every other Ravens fan that has approached me about coming on this series, Billy Cundiff is the first thing that comes to mind because the Ravens, much like we discussed about the Eagles earlier, not really a lot of heartbreaking moments. You know, the Ravens got off pretty easy so far. Disclaimer, I'm older than the Ravens, so they haven't had a lot of time to have heartbreaking moments. But Billy Cundiff is like the big glaring one, and that one's taken. So I was confused as to what would the topic be until this was brought up. Honestly, I can't remember whether she came up with this or I did. So if she did, shout out to her. If I did, still shout out to her for coming on. But I was happy when we approached it because this is the most recent event on it. And I do always say about that 2024 Ravens team, it is, outside of my 2007 Patriots, the best team of my lifetime that did not win a Super Bowl. Flat out. Like, it was, imagine those 2000s Ravens teams with the best defense in football year after year after year. Now give them the MVP at quarterback. That was the 2024 Ravens. And somehow falling short of making the Super Bowl with events we discussed during that game, with Zay Flowers' brain shutting off in a couple big moments. Again, he was a rookie, so we were sure to give him some grace because he was a rookie. We had to during the interview, I had to be sure to bring that up. Like, hey man, he was like what, 20, 21, playing in the biggest game of his entire life. Yeah, we're not expecting a bunch of great decisions from Zay Flowers there. And the fact that Adriana was at this game. I think this might be the only episode where it's a game moment and the person who's the subject of it was in attendance for the day and could set the scene. Very movie X. The imagery was great from her storytelling side. I'll be honest, as a director and editor, I'm not sure I did the greatest job of painting the picture. But hey, I think the episode turned out great. It's one of my favorites. I mean, I love all these, but it's one of my favorites. By the time I got done editing it, I'm happy she liked it as well. And she was the first and somehow only woman to be a guest on this show. That is a failure on my part, I'm not gonna lie. And I am trying to remedy the issue. We just gotta get some DM responses back, and we're gonna go ahead and get that fixed. So with that said, let's move on to the next episode, shall we?
In the shotgun puts Collie in motion.
I hate even going back to that moment. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Like, I hate it.
Looks in his direction. It's picked off.
There's no way. There's no way this is happening again.
He's running free. He's gonna.
Full disclaimer, I'm not a fan of Peyton Manning personally, right? I admit my bias when I have biases against certain players, certain teams. Growing up as a Patriots fan, hearing the Manning versus Brady discussions, I always thought they were ridiculous. I think they're ridiculous now. I never thought that Brady Manning was a rivalry. There's no rivalry between a hammer and a nail, and Brady was the hammer, Manning was the nail, right? But here's the thing. As a member of sports media, you have to take your bias out of these moments. So I didn't want it to be an entire episode of Peyton Manning's awful, he's terrible, he's a choker, blah, blah, blah. No. But there also is an aspect of the story is Peyton choked early in his career. He got over the hump, he won the Super Bowl. And then, oh my God, this pick happened. Here we go again. And I didn't say that. Logan did. All I did was ask the questions. And that's kind of where I kind of changed the interview style a little bit for him. But first off, quick story about Logan, pro fan Logan, who I'm a fan of as well. I discovered him through his video about this moment. Because someone asked the question, similar to the show, what's your most heartbreaking sports moment? He made a video responding that it was this. The Peyton pick in that Super Bowl against New Orleans to Tracy Porter. And it was an episode that's on my original master list of moments that I've been circling to do for the show. And unfortunately, living in Maryland, I don't know that many Colts fans. So when I saw it, I immediately reached out. I was like, hey man, so I do this show. Would you like to come on and talk about it? And thankfully he said yes, shout out to him. Came on, he was great. I love having content creators on the show because they get it. Like they kind of understand. I don't have to tell them, hey, yeah, we recorded for 40 minutes, but the episode's gonna be 10 to 15. They know that already. They know, hey, I gotta turn the personality on a little bit for this video. I gotta make sure my background looks like this. I gotta make sure my lighting looks like this. He knew that. I didn't have to tell him that, which was great. I didn't have to tell him to put on Colts gear. He already had it on, which was awesome. And on top of that, he's a good dude from all I know. All I've known, all I've seen, generally good dude, good vibes. Love the videos and content he makes now. He's starting to get sponsorships and brand deals on his content, which makes me happy. I love to see people that I enjoy succeed. And as far as this episode, a common critique I get for this series is it takes me too long to get to the actual moment, which I kind of take with a grain of salt. There's some truth to that. There's some not truth to that, right? But with this, I thought it was important to build up to the why this pick was so hurtful. Because it's like, it's not just, oh, Peyton Manning threw a pick. It's everything that happened prior, what the pick represented, and then afterwards, painting the picture of making it to that Super Bowl was kind of the end of the Peyton Manning era with the Colts. The next year, they lost to the Jets in the AFC Championship game. Then Peyton was hurt for the whole year, and then he was a Bronco. That was it. That was the end of it. And that's one of the things I enjoy about making this series is kind of not correcting NFL history. Let me not give myself that much credit, but being able to paint the picture of the timeline of NFL history. And I got his opinion of the Andrew Luck thing. Thank God he was honest about it, because I feel like a lot of people lie in hindsight and was like, oh, I wanted Andrew Luck the entire time. Oh, hell, Andrew Luck. He was like, nah, dog, I wanted to keep Peyton. I love Peyton my whole life. Why do I want to get rid of him? Which, again, I appreciate the honesty. So shout out to Logan. Love this episode. If you haven't seen it for God knows why, go see it. And off to the next episode we go.
Could you play any worse right now?
A Falcon fan almost expects disaster.
That's incredible. Did he make the catch? He did.
You got it, because it was over. 28-3, the game is over.
Cuts it under the right arm. Cuts it upfield. Driving forward. Diving to the...
I want credit for my restraint for waiting 10 episodes to get a Falcons fan on here to talk about 28-3 as a Patriots fan. Damn it, I want my credit, because the amount of restraint it took, and the fact that I got Mac Bryant, the football fan historian, who I'm a huge fan of too, who I wanted to work with the whole time. I've had this episode circled since the series started. This was always going to be one. But I said, you know what? Bias to the side for a minute, Kevin. Do the other moments first. We'll get to it. We'll get to it. And honestly, thank God I waited, because I love this episode so much. And Mac is one of my favorite type of guests, because yeah, I got my questions like I usually do. Again, inside baseball, I usually got about 10 to 15. I try to ration out like a minute per question or whatever. The math usually works out somewhere in that range-ish, not including follow-ups or whatever. But what made Mac so great is because his football knowledge is so deep, the interview with him went an hour long. I think the final runtime of the episode ended up being, why am I acting like my laptop isn't in front of me and I can't look this up? Hold on. The final runtime ended up coming to 17 minutes and 32 seconds, which to date is the second longest episode of the show. At the time it was the longest, but to date it is the second longest. And Mac is so great on the show, not only because his bag of football knowledge is expansive and very, very deep. He's a ball knower in the truest sense. Is because he's so good-natured, right? Like, I feel like that shines through the episode as well. Like, he's such a good dude. And it really makes you feel like, oh, darn. Like, they really, look what the Falcons did to this good man. Look what the Falcons did to this good, heartfelt dude. Like, this man was ready to celebrate the Super Bowl with his children, and the Falcons choked it away. How dare they? How dare they do this to this sweet, sweet man? Like, I think he said, oh golly, like Superman in the movie like a few times. Like, Mac's such a good dude, and they ruined it for him. Damn you, Falcons. Damn you. And there's a balance about talking about the 28-3 game where it's how much do you talk about, oh my God, Tom Brady, he's so awesome, and oh my God, the Falcons completely choked that game away. And that's where, again, me as a sports media person and me as a Patriots fan, we're constantly at war. Because in an hour-long interview, we had sections on both. But narratively speaking, it worked better if you told it from the Falcons' point of view. And you focus on Kyle Shanahan, you too big for your britches, big brain, you know what? Why are you the way you are? Why did you have to make this so much harder than it had to be? You lost us this game. Which, did he lose them the game? Kinda. Did he make Matt Ryan fumble? No. Did he know that they were gonna miss some blocks? No, but the play calling definitely didn't help. You run the ball 3 times, the game is over. My favorite moment of the show, and this is an edit that I made, and I laugh still looking at it. We're getting ready to go into overtime, and I'm sitting there, and obviously I write the cut-ins after I edit the A-roll, right? So it's like, all right, so we're going into overtime, right? Anything can happen in overtime. It's first overtime Super Bowl history. They had to have a chance. And then Matt comes in, yeah, we had no shot, dog. Yeah, there was no way we were going to win. We were fucked. Matter of fact, hey, future editor me, play that over this. Oh, that, and pointing out at the end that this is the only sports scarring moment that's a punchline. Like, we have 13 episodes of this show, and the 28-3 collapse is the only one that's seen as a joke. Like, we're not cracking jokes about, whatchamacallit. We're not cracking jokes about the catch. We're not cracking jokes about Billy Cundiff missing the kick. It's been almost a decade. We're still making 28-3 Falcons jokes. Still. And we're going to every March 28th for the rest of eternity. And God forbid, when it's 2028, the entire month of March, if I'm a Falcons fan, I'm just never gonna leave the house. I ain't watching none of the sports networks except Fox Sports. Shout out to Fox Sports. Like, it just doesn't compute. So shout out to my Patriots for making that work. Shout out to the Falcons for choking that away. Shout out to Mac Bryant for being an amazing guest. And shout out to y'all, the viewers, because that's also the most viewed episode of the show, which I knew it would be because it's the most iconic sports fallout ever. And hearing a Falcons fan actually talk about it is a unique perspective that honestly doesn't exist on the internet, at least from what I saw. It's usually either a Patriots fan talking about it, a Patriots player talking about it, or someone with no stake in the game just crapping on the Falcons. So having it from a sympathetic view, I feel like makes this episode unique, and it's back to the core of why this series exists.
How
does that happen in the Denver secondary?
Danger, 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 warning sign.
That is stunning.
There were so many levels of dumbfoundedness in that moment.
That the Denver Broncos could misplay this to this point.
The Mile High Miracle. First off, shout out to Mr. Gus Ramsey, my program director at Full Sail University, Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting, former ESPN producer for SportsCenter, Gus Ram, Talent Productions. He's very expansive list of credits. Emmy winner, like the man got a lot of accomplishments, and it still baffles my mind sometimes that I could just like email him and be like, hey, Mr. Ramsey, what you think about this? And I'll get like an answer. Like that part still kind of baffles my mind, and the fact that he came on the show and gave a great episode, great telling of the story. We'll get to my favorite moment of the episode shortly, but this actually came from the first time I showed him an episode of this show. It was in a feedback session with, I hate name dropping, but Dan Patrick, the namesake of the school, does a feedback session once a month-ish with all the students where he goes through some of the work that we do, and I showed him an episode of Sports Card. It was Mr. Ramsey and Dan Patrick. They saw an episode of Sports Card. I believe it was the Double Doink episode with Blair. I believe that was the one I showed them. And I showed him that, and he was like, oh, this is great. And then he immediately said, everyone has one of these moments, and he brought up the Mile High Miracle as a Broncos fan. And I saw that, and I was like, huh. I was like, well, since you brought it up, would you like to come on and talk about it? And this works for a lot of reasons. Number one, it's another Peyton Manning fail moment. As a person who hates Peyton Manning, that kind of works in my favor. Also, the Ravens are featured in so far 2 other episodes before this. Both of them involve them losing. As a person who lives in Maryland, at some point, the Ravens needed to be a part of a win in this series. So thankfully, this episode exists, Ravens fans. So y'all have a win in this series so far. So far in the Sports Card series, the Ravens are 1-2. We'll find another moment the Ravens won to make them 2-2. Maybe I'll get a 49ers fan to talk about the time they lost in the Super Bowl. Maybe that counts. I don't know. The production challenge for me with this episode, honestly, was knowing that such a person with such a catalog was going to watch it. Because, yeah, I know I make things for the internet and everyone in the world can watch it. Lord knows who's going to watch it. Heck, Barack Obama could stumble upon an episode of the Double Doink one day as a Bears fan. I don't know. Like, anybody could watch an episode of this show, but it was the fact that someone with such an expansive sports media background was not only going to watch it, was the subject of the show. I was like, okay, like, we got to bring the A+ game to this one. Like, like things that I'd usually probably let go. No. Like, we gotta get on it. Like, there is no background keep of me chuckle and think that no one's gonna notice. No, edit that out. Like, that gotta go. Like, try to make this as pristine as possible. And I think I did that. He enjoyed the episode. I enjoyed the episode. There is one moment that I messed up on an edit that if you didn't notice it, I'm not gonna tell you. My favorite moment, by far, is him telling the story of the actual moment where he's like, my TV cut off before the ball left Joe Flacco's hand, and it came back on when they were celebrating in the end zone. By far, that's the craziest story of any of these sports scarring moments, because what do you mean you didn't even see the throw in real time? Oh my God, I would have been inconsolable if I just turned my TV back on thinking, hey, we sacked them, we good, and turn it on and they're celebrating a touchdown. Oh, I would think the sports gods had it out for me. I'd be like, oh, okay, thank you, you didn't want me to see it, but you could have preserved my heart just a little bit. That would have been awesome, but wasn't in the cards for the Broncos that day, wasn't in the cards for Mr. Ramsey that day. Thank you to Mr. Ramsey for coming on. Thank you to Jacoby Jones. Rest in peace. We didn't get a rest in peace Jacoby Jones off in the episode, which we should have, but rest in peace Jacoby Jones. Shout out to Joe Flacco for delivering a just beautiful rainbow shot. And off to the next episode we go.
And here we go. First snap of the overtime.
On our defense? No way.
The Broncos have been in 3 overtime games this year. They won them all.
out. Weird shit happens in Mile High City.
Got him at the 40. It's Thomas at the 50. Stiff arm got him free to the 30.
Tebow 316. Now, there's certain moments I want to cover, but I can never figure out how. I've always wanted to do something about Tim Tebow's era in the NFL. I always want to do something about Tebow mania because that's something I don't want to get lost to history for something that was as big as it was. Because in the moment, you would have swore Tim Tebow was Joe Montana, Tom Brady, and Patrick Mahomes all wrapped up into one. They treated him like he was God's gift to football. Although, even though he was winning, he stunk. We can be honest, he stunk. And this moment with my man Peyton Gerard gave me the chance to finally cover it. And oh boy, did Peyton deliver. Because this episode is so funny. Like, some of these episodes are tragic. Yeah, all of them have a touch of humor to them. But this one is just funny. Like, the whole thing is just hilarious. Peyton's funny. Like, my absolute favorite moment of the show is when he's like, he could be at a child sex trafficking benefit and they're going to ask him about this play because it's that iconic. I laugh really hard every time I see that moment. I laugh during the edit to the point where I couldn't even find a B-roll to cover that because there's no way I could not get that taken down from YouTube. Because what do you mean, Peyton? Like, who thinks of stuff like that? It was so cool to do in the moment. Peyton is also I guess I'm a co-host now on the Opening Kickoff podcast. Plug. I'm going to be there all football season long. So Peyton's co-host with me on the Opening Kickoff podcast. I've worked with Peyton a lot, but somehow we've never come across this moment and talked about it with him being a Steelers fan. And thankfully, because of the show, we finally got a chance to do it. And a unique perspective as well. Unique to this series, but not unique to the human experience or whatever. The moment of going back to school the next day after a bad sports moment. That part right there, oh my God. Like, immediately I thought of 2008, after the Super Bowl, the 18-1 David Tyree catch, people putting their book bags on top of their head, talking about I'm David Tyree. Like, I immediately was transformed to it. And if you were of school age when your sports scarring moment happened, you remember that moment. That moment stays in your bones. You don't forget it. And I think Peyton did a fantastic job of bringing up that moment, and I think it's fun. I love that episode so much. It's so fun. To the next episode we go. Last episode of the show. The Browns move to Baltimore. Now, in my opinion, this is easily the most heartbreaking moment of the show. Because
Cleveland Browns apparently set to skip town at the end of the year and move to Baltimore.
I hate to admit it, but I cried.
It's a great stadium, a great city, great fans are here. It would be a tragedy, but we can't speculate.
If you're a Browns fan, you're a Browns fan for life.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a signed contract in hand.
You can't imagine your favorite team no longer existing. Like, only but so many cities in the modern era have been through that. The Seattle Supersonics, the Houston Oilers, and the Browns are the three that pop up in my head. I'm sure I'm missing a couple, but those are like the three out of how many teams that can look at it and be like, yo, they took our team from us. We didn't lose a game, we lost our team. And my former coach, Coach Chuck Smith, who's one of my favorite humans and one of the more formative men in my entire life. One of my quick side note before we get back to the episode. One of the gifts Coach Smith gave me when I graduated high school was a book by Martin Luther King titled The Measure of a Man, which is somewhere on the other side of this camera that if I was better at planning, I would have so I could show you, because I do still have a copy of that book that I read probably once a year. And the part that stands out to me is a Martin Luther King quote that I'm sure a good bit of you have heard. It's, "The measure of a man is not the color of his skin, it's the content of his character." And that largely shaped my worldview about masculinity. That and a Malcolm X quote, another book he told me to read, the autobiography of Malcolm X. That one was like a year before, I think, going into my junior year. A man who stands for nothing falls for anything. So those two always tied masculinity to morality and character for me. it's always been your measure of a man is based in the type of person you are, the type of man you are. And especially in the modern landscape of the way that, oh, as a man, you're doing this, oh, you're sassy, oh, you're that. The reason I look at those conversations and I just laugh at them is because this is how I learn masculinity. Because we're not talking about morals. We're talking about, is it manly to eat ice cream in public? Like that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about what you stand for as a man. We're not talking about the content of your character. We're talking about some other frivolous nonsense that has, in my opinion, nothing to do with the type of man you are. Okay, off my soapbox I go, back to the Browns. Getting Coach Smith for this episode, I think the only Browns fan I know in real life who also lives in Maryland. So the most unique perspective I could find of this episode of he left Cleveland to come to Maryland as well. Not to the same effect of the Browns. He had his own separate reasons for doing so, but he's also able to share in that perspective as someone who's lived in both areas and has close encounters with Ravens fans as well. I did have to cut a section out because the interview for this was like an hour long, and I think this is the longest episode of the show. 25 minutes. It was almost like 50. A section of the show that had to get cut out was about his relation to Ravens fans now. His relations to the 2000 Ravens that won the Super Bowl. Ravens fans who know what it's like to lose your team. Hint, hint, episode coming down the line, possibly after this one. And the fact that they rub it in Browns fans' faces when it's like, dude, this was y'all. This was y'all. A little empathy, please. Goddamn. This, to me, narratively could have been based in a lot of things. It could have been framed as angry. It could have been phrased as an emotional tearjerker. But a narrative thread I found early was the relationship between my coach and his father. The episode starts and ends with the relationship with his father. And my God, what's more powerful than sports bringing a family together? The episode starts with my dad sat us down and said, this is our team, the Cleveland Browns. And it ends with the Baker playoff win, because after such a heavy episode, I needed to end it on a happy note. And his last words before the end credits are, I wish my dad were here so I could have talked to him about it. To me, that's beautiful. And there was another like 15, 20 minutes of the interview after that, but I was like, no. That's the end. That's the last lines of the episode outside of the post-credit scene. And again, analyzing fan relationships to their team is what I find the most interesting when it comes to sports media. It's the reason this show exists. And the fact that we were able to dig into it. What is it like to lose your team? What is it like to have a team that was, forget instrumental to your life, instrumental to your relationship with your dad? What is it like for 50 years of history to be gone like that? The fact that I was able to get an episode of that and Coach Smith covers it so beautifully. He's so eloquent. He's a former trial lawyer and English teacher, by the way. So for y'all wondering why he was so eloquent in the episode, that's why. The fact that it was covered so beautifully to me is why that episode works so well. I love it. It was by far the hardest one to edit because it was so long and there was so much of it I didn't want to cut out. But I was like, okay, this episode can't be an hour. I knew I wasn't getting to 15 minutes, but I knew it couldn't be 30. So I was like, okay, let's find a healthy middle ground somewhere in here. But that's what we ended up landing on, was the 25. And there are deeper moments I eventually want to cover in this series. One of which, if you're still listening to this episode, a bonus treat for you. One of which is Hurricane Katrina with the New Orleans Saints. This episode to me was a primer for that. Granted, it's not as tragic, but for me, it's okay, you can handle emotional moments responsibly. Sometimes I fear that because I'm a jokey, unserious person. Let's keep it a buck. Y'all watch this show if you're listening so far. You've watched my stuff. You know I'm unserious. So the fact that I'm able to handle that makes me be like, okay, we could apply this to heavier topics and go from there, you know? So with that, thank you so much for listening. I love the way the storytelling of the show is evolving. I love the way people are responding to the show, and I hope to keep making this for 1,000 episodes, to be honest. Thank you so much.